I always knew my grandparents' house was old, but until I stepped inside after all these years, I never realized just how ancient it felt. The place had been abandoned since I was a kid. My grandparents passed away when I was about 8, and nobody in the family had touched it since. It wasn't just a house. It was a relic, standing at the edge of a dense forest like it had been forgotten by time itself. When I inherited the property, I decided to renovate it, mostly out of a sense of duty, maybe a little bit of nostalgia. I didn't want the place to fall apart any more than it already had. But there was something about the house that felt different now. Even on the brightest of days, it felt darker inside than I remembered. The windows were dusty, letting in just enough light to create shadows that danced around the furniture. It felt watchful, like something was waiting. The renovation started small, clearing out cobwebs, patching up some cracks in the walls, and replacing creaky floorboards. One afternoon, while I was knocking down a crumbling wall in the back bedroom, my grandmother's old sewing room, I hit something solid. The hammer clanged against wood, but there shouldn't have been wood behind that wall. Curious, I pried the old plaster away. Behind it was a small, hidden door. I almost laughed out loud at the thought of finding a secret room. What was this, a mystery novel? But something about the door felt wrong. It wasn't just the fact that it had been concealed, but the way it looked. It was heavy, reinforced, and unlike anything else in the house. It had no handle, only a small keyhole in the center. I found the key tucked away in one of my grandmother's old jewelry boxes, buried beneath some old brooches. It was small and rusted, but as soon as I saw it, I knew it belonged to that door. Looking back, I should have never turned that key. The hinges groaned as I pushed the door open, revealing a room that hadn't seen the light of day in decades. The air that hit me was stale, thick with dust, but there was something else, something colder. My flashlight beam revealed faded wallpaper, old wooden furniture draped in white sheets, and the faint smell of mothballs. It looked as though whoever had lived in this room had left in a hurry, with books and photographs scattered around. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched, frozen in time. I remember standing in the doorway, looking into that forgotten room, feeling an unease crawl up my spine. But it wasn't until I found the photographs that I felt true fear. They were strewn across an old wooden desk, yellowed with age, but the images were clear enough to make me stop in my tracks. They were pictures of my grandparents, except they weren't. At least, not how I remembered them. Their eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark, and their smiles, twisted and unnatural, sent chills through me. That night, I slept fitfully, tossing and turning as strange dreams plagued me. In my dreams, I was back in that room, standing in front of the photographs. But in the dream, the figures in the pictures were moving. Their eyes followed me, and their mouths whispered things I couldn't understand. When I woke up, the house felt different, heavier. The air seemed thicker, colder. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, just the result of unsettling dreams, but it didn't stop. Every night after that, I heard them, the whispers. It started soft, almost imperceptible. At first, I thought it was just the wind slipping through the cracks in the old windows. But the more I listened, the more distinct the voices became. They weren't just random noises. They were calling my name. I'd lie in bed at night, paralyzed, listening to those soft, breathy voices. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then things began to move. I found the door to that room open more than once, even though I was certain I'd locked it. The first time I brushed it off as a mistake. Maybe I hadn't turned the key all the way. But after the third or fourth time, I knew something was wrong. One evening, while cleaning out the hallway, I noticed something on the floor just outside the room. It was a photograph, one of the ones I had found on the desk. It had been lying face down, but when I picked it up, my blood ran cold. It was a picture of me. I don't know how it was possible, but there I was standing in the doorway of that room, flashlight in hand. My face was twisted into the same unnatural smile that my grandparents had worn in their photos. That's when I knew I had to find out what this room really was. I started digging through old family records, letters, and journals, hoping for some clue, some explanation. Buried in a box of my grandfather's papers, I found an old letter, yellowed with age. It was addressed to my grandmother from a man named Father Alistair. In the letter, he begged her not to open the room again. What was sealed inside should never be disturbed, he wrote. It was meant to stay hidden, for the safety of us all. My heart pounded as I read the words. What had they sealed in there? What had I let out? That night, the whispers grew louder. They weren't just calling my name anymore. They were speaking in full sentences. I couldn't understand everything, but I caught fragments, words like freedom and release. It wasn't long before the presence in the house became more real. Shadows darted just out of sight. I'd feel something brush past me, cold as ice, but when I turned around, nothing was there. Each time I entered that room, the air grew heavier, and the shadows in the corners seemed darker. I tried avoiding it, keeping the door locked, but the presence wouldn't let me. The whispers followed me throughout the house. They echoed in every room, growing louder and more persistent, until I was no longer sure if I was hearing them with my ears or inside my own head. It was worse at night. Sleep became impossible. The voices grew closer, louder, until it felt like they were right beside my bed, breathing in my ear. I started seeing things, too, flickers of movement in the corners of my vision, dark shapes that disappeared as soon as I looked at them directly. I could feel them watching me, waiting for something. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my bedroom. I lay there, frozen, listening as the steps grew closer and closer until they stopped just outside my door. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. I sat up, heart pounding, and stared into the darkness of the hallway. I couldn't see anything, but I knew something was there. I could feel its presence, heavy and cold, watching me. The next morning, I decided I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I packed my things and left. I didn't care about the renovations. I didn't care about the inheritance. I just wanted to be far away from whatever was in that house. But even now, months later, I still hear the whispers. They follow me, no matter where I go. I've come to realize that whatever was trapped in that room, whatever my grandparents had sealed away, it wasn't just inside the house. It's inside me now, and every day it gets stronger.